Welcome to Elite Rugby S&C podcast, the best podcast talking all things rugby and strength and conditioning. At Elite Rugby S&C, we provide athletes with strength and conditioning programs that provides you with everything you need to become a beast and take your game to the next level. No matter what stage of the year or season, Elite Rugby S&C has a program for you. You can try before you buy, so try our 7-day $7 trial to get a taste of what we offer here at Elite Rugby S&C. So take your game to the next level, become a beast, and join Elite Rugby S&C today. So g'day Dan, how are you?
Yeah, really well, Kieran. Really well, mate. Just up here in sunny Queensland, mate. So obviously been a busy week for me, but yeah, just excited to have a chat and just relax and talk a little bit about footy and high performance, mate.
That's awesome. How is the weather going up there in Brisbane compared down to here in Canberra? You know, there's a bit of a difference, and have you adjusted to the sort of heat and the humidity as well up there?
Yeah, it certainly is a difference. Look, last week was probably the hottest week, and I was actually over in Japan doing some coaching. So I think it was like in the low 40s last week, and the humidity's high. But obviously a drier heat down in Canberra. And then as we get closer to winter, mate, it doesn't get too cold here, but and certainly nothing like Canberra. But yeah, it's nice here. But you know, I really love the four seasons in Canberra and winter. It's probably just when it gets into November and December, and it's still about 15 degrees max. It starts to wear you down a bit. But no, it's good here, and yeah, I hope all is well down there too, mate.
No, it's going well. So when it gets cold up there, is it like putting socks on with your Birks? Is that the like the adjustment to your outfit?
That's probably it. I don't have a pair of Birks, mate. I just wear a pair of thongs around, you know. So it's pretty much just boardies, and you might go to a long sleeve t-shirt if it's gets below 20, mate. But yeah, not too often do you need to pull out the heavy jackets and the beanies.
That's fair enough. And I would definitely question, why do you need a Kathmandu jacket up there in Queensland?
Yeah.
It doesn't get cold.
No, it doesn't at all. No, I've seen some people walking around in July and August. It's about 24 degrees, and they've got the scarf on and that sort of thing. And yeah, but anyway, they
Bizarre.
winter wardrobe that, I suppose, mate.
Mm. So before we get into the more serious questions, growing up as a young lad, what sports did you play, and how did you end up playing rugby?
I played. Look, it was really two sports for me. It was rugby league in the winter and cricket in the summer. You know, the Christmas holidays was all about cricket. And then obviously the winter was all about rugby league. And I love both games and continue to do so, you know. And it wasn't until I went to boarding school at Townsville Grammar back in 1989, I think it was. I was 13, and I was introduced to rugby. And, you know, naturally, if you've played rugby league, you wanted to give it a crack. My brother had gone to boarding school at Morris Brothers Ashgrove in Brisbane. He was playing rugby as well, so yeah, wanted to give it a crack and really enjoyed it. Enjoyed the game, and yeah, I suppose over time you get picked in a couple of rep teams. You all of a sudden you're going on tours to New Zealand. That's one thing they did really well in North Queensland was we had great volunteers, people like Bill Muller and Ron Burke, who were outstanding coaches and mentors, but they'd organise tours to New Zealand and you know, the UK and Papua New Guinea, these sorts of places. So you soon learnt that in rugby, whilst it's a great game, the opportunities to travel and see the world are something that we probably take for granted. And that's, you know, I fell in love with the game quickly.
That's awesome. I think it's some of your best memories are going on tour, even if it's just to a different part of Australia as well. Like I remember we went on a tour for Darramar, and we always every second year you go to New Zealand, and that was just fantastic. You know, we got to see the Crusaders training facility. We got to
Yeah,
talk to I think it was Andy Ellis and another player who I can't think of at the moment, and just getting to chat with them was really
yeah,
cool. Going to Queenstown, or even if it's just players coming over. I remember Vikings had a program, and with the Brumbies bringing over some Japanese players. It's just
yeah.
cool to learn from them and teach them the game as well, and just to see that. And yeah, you
That's
just
it.
don't know where you can go with your rugby these days.
No, that's it. They're all great experiences, and anytime you're away with your mates on tour, you can go wherever, and you're going to have a good time, aren't you? But to experience different cultures, and the reality is, most of the time when you go on tour, especially at a young age, the locals just go out of their way to make you feel welcome and make you, have a wonderful experience, and I've certainly got many of them.
That's awesome. So speaking of rugby league, as a coach, who would you want to steal away from the NRL to bring over to rugby union? Is there anyone sort of this day and age, or it might be a few years back, that you could think of that, that person would actually go quite well in rugby union?
I always thought Billy Slater would have been a very good rugby union player. He's just the elite fitness, unbelievable work ethic, smart. And as you can see that now, he's turned into a coach, and he'll probably be a very successful coach. And just, he had things that you just can't coach, like acceleration, footwork, and speed. I've always thought that him against tight five defenders would, be a nightmare for the defense team. More recently, Joseph Suwali is obviously looks to be a rare talent, and then Nelson Asafa Solomona. I remember seeing him down at the Storm. I went down there for a visit not long after he'd first arrived, and they spoke about, he had rugby union background, and he's just got number six written all over him, number six, number eight, or even loose head lock. Big, powerful man who's pretty nasty as well, and I don't mind that in a player.
That's awesome. It's always interesting because it seems like every year there's always, Australia rugby's always trying to see what talent they can bring over, and especially with a World Cup here as well, they're trying to get some talent over. But yeah, it's always fascinating to see if this player did come over, how well they will go. And I think Billy Slater is a perfect example. That elusiveness he has is
Yeah,
just ridiculous, and it would have been really cool to see that,
yeah,
in rugby union.
definitely.
That's awesome. So, when did you decide you wanted to become a professional rugby coach? Was this always an area of interest for you?
Look, I always wanted to be a coach. Even when I was a kid, like I spoke about rugby league, like mate, I'd sit there and do the tackle counts, watching a game of rugby league on a Saturday afternoon on the ABC with my dad, and I'd take statistics, and I remember writing my own little scrapbooks or books, whatever you call them. Just always loved collecting information and studying the game. So I always wanted to coach, and I knew that I would coach. I never got into coaching to be a professional coach. I played for, obviously at school and my hometown in Ayr, the Burdekin Cane Toads, and then moved to Brisbane to play for Souths. And once I retired, I wanted to give back. And what's always attracted me to coaching is being able to give back and pass on your knowledge that you picked up as a player, but also staying involved and being a part of the dressing shed. Like, I just love that dressing shed environment after a game. And that's why I started coaching. And then I coached South for a few years. The game changer for me, and when my mindset shifted, was when I moved to Tuggeranong to coach the Vikings. I had an email pop up. I was selling orthopedic implants to surgeons at that point in time, and had an email pop up at work asking if I was interested in applying. And I thought, I'll apply. I won't even mention it to the wife. There's no chance I'll get it. Anyway, I put my CV in and cover letter, and next minute, David Assenheim and Brad Harris are emailing me saying, "Can you come down for an interview?" And ended up getting the job, and that was my first full-time coaching position. And when you coach full-time, it allows you to upskill yourself. And, we train Tuesday, Thursday nights mainly. So you had all day to work hard and get yourself better. And I used that time wisely, and we had a bit of success and built relationships at the Brumbies. And after a while, I was like, well, this could be a career. And I've been very fortunate to have had the opportunities that I've had, and just pinch myself every day, mate. I'm not going to work. I'm coaching footy. It's a dream.
That's awesome. You had a pretty good S&C coach down there at Tuggeranong at the time, didn't you?
The great Ben Norcott. Yeah, he was honestly, he was excellent for me, Benny. He really challenged me, and we bumped heads a few times, especially at the start. And he pulled me into line, and I've always really respected that. and appreciated that. And we were a pretty good team. We trained very hard at a high intensity. We were very professional, mate. He was sitting in the grandstand back in 2011, feeding me live GPS data at training, and that's just the resource that you have when you're fortunate to work at a club like Tuggeranong, and yeah, I just think now, geez, we're pretty well organised, pretty professional, and prepared our players well, which allowed us to be successful.
That's awesome. How much of the statistics go into what you do as a coach nowadays? Because there's just so many stats about every single aspect of the game and every single player. How do you use that towards coaching? And do you sort of got to remind yourself as well, hey, I need to sort of break away from the stats and look at, say, the how the team's going itself and how that individual's going itself as well?
Yeah, stats are important. There's just so many numbers. The first thing is who's producing them is the first question I always ask. Because if it's someone outside your environment, then how relevant are they? Like if it's line out success, scrum success, that sort of thing. I think that's pretty basic and pretty simple and easy to put a number to and measure. But a lot of other stats, there's just so many numbers that you can get yourself wrapped up in these days, and I will use them if it's relevant to performance, and we would have KPIs and statistics that we'd look to every week. Might be a couple in attack, a couple in defence that we knew that were relevant to us performing well and ultimately winning. But there's the science and the statistical side of things. You've got to have feel. You got to have a feel for your group and a feel for how are they between the ears, how are they physically, and the numbers might not always back that up. Someone once told me that statistics are like matches. They're dangerous in the wrong set of hands. So you use them, but the science but ultimately for me, feel is equally as important, if not more important.
100%. And yeah, couldn't agree more because you sort of look towards the NFL or baseball. It's just statistics heavy, and they're
Yeah,
always going by the analytics. And sometimes you could miss something, um, that could have changed the game, or could have helped that player, or could have helped that play. So you just got to find that balance. And like you said, you got to make sure you're getting those statistics from a credible source and
yeah.
not listening to the noise outside.
That's it. And I think, from a broadcasting perspective, people sitting at home on the couch, like a lot of those numbers, they'll find incredibly interesting, and that's great. So use them where you can. But as a coach and what you present to your players, I think you're just going to be really careful not to fill their head with a whole lot of numbers and data, and understand what's important for them as an individual and ultimately you as a team.
I think one of the statistics I found really interesting the last couple of years is line out sort of or mauling success from a line out. Like if you're 5 meters out, you're more likely to score. But if you take it a meter back or 2 meters back, that percentage just drops a lot. And I
Right.
found that really fascinating. That extra 1 to 2 meters just really doesn't mean you're going to get there. But if you're 5 meters out, it's really hard to stop.
Yeah, again, I think it's a bit of a mindset thing, isn't it? If you're a player and Tom Banks puts it 5 meters out from the 40-meter line, all of a sudden you get a fair lift, don't you, from the crowd and the adrenaline within inside you but yeah, if the kick's shanked and all of a sudden you're 10, 15 meters out, but look, we would always at the Brumbies, we'd certainly always back ourselves there from a distance if we had to, and at times you have success and at times you don't. But I think over the last few years, teams have really worked hard on more defence and understand now how important it is to have a good maul, but also on the flip side of it to make sure that you're denying teams from 5 meters out, because how the game is at the moment, generally who wins the A zone and who wins the D zone, so who defends their goal line best and who takes their opportunities best in the attacking 22, normally wins the game. So, and obviously maul plays a big part in that.
The good thing I like about your time with the Brumbies was you always added some little spice to that maul as well. So you wouldn't always just drive it. You would, bring it out the back if that was Rima or Rory Scott and giving the ball off to, say, Len Ikitau or, Ire Simone. They would hit that up and you would play your game off that. And you would change it up and it did
Yeah.
leave the opposition guessing themselves like, are they going to maul it? Are they going to do something else?
It. Yeah, and that's why it's so important, and that's why I think the maul's such a huge part of the game. Like obviously Wayne Smith came out during the week or last week, and had his thoughts around he doesn't like the maul, but it's such an important part of the game, and the variety that you can build off it, and that's why it's critical to have a good one. If you've got a good maul, then they've got to commit defensively, which then creates one-on-one opportunity for backs to attack. No different to a scrum, So I think it's crazy for people to be saying that we got to outlaw the maul and it's legal obstruction and that sort of thing. I just think the variety and what you can do off the back of it is that's where coaching and analysis comes into it. So my thoughts there would be work harder on your defence.
100%. And if we can get one-on-one opportunities with, Len Nikotau against someone else,
That's it.
Len's probably going to win that 9 times out of 10.
That's it, and that's what people pay for, yeah. But I also think at GIR, the crowd loved when we did kick to the corner, and the anticipation of what was coming.
100%. They didn't want you to, go for the points or anything. They wanted you to score tries, get bonus points, and really make sure that we're making the most out of the game.
Yeah, that's it. And I think that's probably the big difference with Test rugby is so often in Test rugby, you got to take the points when they're on offer. Super rugby, it'd be rare that Al would point to the sticks or Christian before him. It was, we generally be pretty confident in that area of the field to back ourselves.
100%. So, can you share with us your current coaching philosophy?
Yeah, I can. Like I don't have a paragraph or anything. My coaching philosophy has always been built around discipline, work ethic, real detail and clarity. I think it's critical from me as a coach and from my coaching team that the players understand what's expected of them or what the plan is as soon as they cross the chalk on Saturday night. If they're going out there with too much in their head, am I meant to be doing this? Am I meant to be doing that? Then we haven't done our job. The messaging's been confused or there's been too much messaging. So clarity is really important because if they have clarity, then they can just go out and play football. That's what they've done since they were knee-high to a grasshopper, and they were kids running around the backyard. So let them perform and do what they do naturally. But the other side of it, and probably, like care and enjoyment, making sure that you really care for your players and your staff and that you're enjoying it. We work in a very stressful environment, especially these days with social media. There's keyboards that sit in front of everyone, and there's a lot of very brave people that sit behind laptops and rip into players and rip into coaches and that sort of thing. So just making sure that you're aware of that and enjoying it, enjoying what we're doing, having a laugh. Laughing brings energy to the group. Energy is contagious, and then all of a sudden they'll consume the information much better. And knowing that you're always there for them, I think that's probably something that I think is critically important as a coach now.
That's awesome. And I'm going to bring this question up now instead of doing it later. But as the head coach, how do you create that culture and environment where players push themselves and their teammates to be the best that they can be? It seems like you touched upon it just a bit then, but what else have you done over your time, let's say at the Brumbies, to really make sure that they've got a good culture and environment so the players can be the best that they can be, and also the coaching staff as well?
Yeah, look, it's cultures. It's funny, isn't it? I heard someone at a conference, say, what is culture? You can't see it, you can't measure it. So you certainly know when you've got a good one, and I think if you're honest, people know when you don't have a good culture or a good environment, whatever you want to refer to it as. And for me, it's basically just your accepted actions and behaviours that you live and breathe every day of the week. But the really good clubs or good environments, when people aren't watching, that's when you see it. When you see someone, and it could be as little as cleaning up the sink in the team room, in the players' room, or cleaning up the coffee machine, or not leaving your plate lying around, or leaving your cup or water bottle lying around. or someone pulling someone up saying, mate, you might want to pick that up. You've left that there. And that's when you know you've got a good one. My approach has always been pretty simple. You need to be really clear on what those expected standards and behaviours are, both on and off the field. Individually, as a forward pack unit, as a backline unit, and obviously collectively as a team. You got to know this is what's expected of you when we train. This is what's required from you every session, and this is what the expected behaviours of are you when we're not on the field and when you're not even at Brumbies HQ. People know who you are. If you're going to carry on like a mug at midnight in Civic, then expect there to be consequences. That's the key, and then you also just need to have a mindset of wanting to get better every day. Both staff and players, and want to do that, want to improve yourself, review each day. Have I actually got better? And then enjoy living that, you know what I mean? And I think how you can enjoy that is by celebrating it. When you see good examples of it, we'd have little awards and that at the Brumbies that would celebrate someone turning up to club training on a Thursday night without being asked to, or turning up at a school, or helping someone out at a shopping centre, or whatever it might be, you know what I mean? But celebrate it, and then, because if you celebrate it, again, energy, a bit of enjoyment, the players and the group soon understand that it's important.
I love that. And I remember early back in my time at Tuggeranong Vikings when Christian came down and Scotty CEO and
Yeah.
and Jared Butler. It was just like these guys play on TV. They play for the Wallabies and stuff, and it's just really cool to see them and have those chats. And then they play for my club. That was awesome, and I still get starstruck now when you see someone, a rugby player walk around. But it was just
Yeah.
really cool to see them interact and give back to the game, and those have been some awesome interactions that I have had, and I can still remember them quite clearly as well.
Yeah, and I think, mate, in all clubs, connecting to your community and making sure that they feel a part of the journey and that they feel connected to you as a team is really important and so important down there in Canberra.
One thing I think the Brumbies have done really, really well is also embracing the Polynesian community. Can you speak more about that? What you were trying to do each year when you were down there in Canberra?
Yeah, look, the reality now is that most squads within Australia, 50% of your players are of Polynesian heritage, and so we did some pretty cool things there. We'd have in 2019 we did Pacifica Day. I didn't want it just to be a box ticking exercise. Like, I think lots of people or lots of teams have done it in the past. I wanted it to be a real learning experience and genuine learning experience for the Fijians learning about the Tongans, and the Tongans learning about the Fijians. Obviously, the Australians learning about all the Pacifica cultures and what's important, and getting an understanding of what's important to the players. So, we had some really good days there, and I think it was really enjoyable and really appreciated by the players, and the Polynesian boys soon understood that it was genuine, that we cared for what their culture stood for, and we wanted to learn and know about it. So yeah, I think we did that in 2019, and didn't want to just copy and paste it, do it again in 2020. I think we did it again in 21 with the help of the great Tony Abel and other people within the community. We'd cook traditional Polynesian meals, or the boys would cook it. Like Tavita Kurandrani and Henry Spate. Wow, they can cook a beautiful meal, beautiful Fijian meal, and then Big Sol Carter would get the pork or the pig on the spit, and yeah, so and that's so important, isn't it, to Pacifica people, is they celebrate and connect around a meal, as do Australians, and I think that's they're really special days.
Yeah, I love it. And the times I've been with rugby clubs, the best times have been when you are doing those, embracing other people's cultures and getting to understand their stories and backgrounds, because it just makes everyone more connected and feel connected. And if you have that, you're going to be better teammates. If you're better teammates, you're going to perform there out in the field better as well.
Correct. My connection's the key. If they feel connected to one another, then they'll always go that extra mile. You know what I mean? I remember saying to Richie and Rory Arnold in a team meeting, I said, what would you do for your brother? You know what I mean? If push come to shove, he said, I'd jump in front of a bus for him. And I said, and that's what brotherhood's all about. You know what I mean? He'd be prepared to die for his brother. And if you've got a team who feel that brotherhood and that connection, and they all feel like that for one another, then you can achieve some pretty special things.
Yeah, it's awesome. And lastly, with the culture and the community aspect, one thing I've noticed sort of over the years, and speaking to Carmen, who used to work there at Brumbies, was you see the Brumbies after getting scored against or scoring points, they come together and take a 1 to 2 breaths and are able to center themselves, relax a little bit, and then a clear message has been put out by Alan or one of the staff who's running on the field. When did you sort of implement that, and when did you know you needed to implement that? Because previously you might have seen a little bit of chatter from everyone else and not coming together and refocusing. Like, there's all that micro chat. So when did you think that needed to be an area we could improve on? And now the team does it regularly, and it's just a great thing to see.
Uh, we started that back in 2019. We had we just will. I got the analysts at the time to show me vision of huddles after we'd conceded points or we'd scored points, and we were just a little bit scattery, and there was quite a lot of different messages, and so we just wanted to refine that. And I worked with the leaders at the time, and it was just about, again, connection, coming together to to physically and visually connect through, heads up, eyes up, and then we'd construct who the trainer would go to in terms of the leadership group, who would talk after points were scored against us, who would talk when we'd scored points, and what was important next. And it was just making sure that we maintained focus and that we were living within that very moment. You can get caught up in what's happening on the big screen or what's happening in the crowd or that sort of thing. So just making sure that everyone was on the same page and everyone was really clear. This is what we've got to improve, or this is what we're doing well. This is what's important next. And it also limited the amount of voices and gave real clarity around righto, who's talking when. And I think the other thing is it helps develop your leaders. A big part about developing leaders is enabling them to lead, and that was another example of them being able to do that.
I think it was just a massive game change. Like,
Yeah,
I've seen it at club rugby when you've just seen all these little micro chats and conversations happening, and the captain's trying to say something, but two people are talking about something else. But if you can really come together, it makes a massive difference. And I think the Brumbies started that, and then all the other Super Rugby's are like, Super Rugby teams are like, oh yeah, we probably should do that as well.
yeah, no, that's right. No, it's certainly pretty common these days. But the other thing is you got to train it, and we'd practice it at training, and every now and then, like I'd always meet with my leaders on a Monday morning, and they'd bring it up, there's too much voice, so we'd need to address it, or they'd address it in a players meeting, and then we'd train it. You know what I mean? This is what's happening, and I'd give them a minute or 90 seconds within a training session to come together, connect, get a breath, and then listen to what the message was.
No, that's awesome. So, what have been some of the main highlights in your coaching career so far? What stands out?
Highlights for me, obviously, winning in 2020 was a highlight. Mate, getting my first contract with the Brumbies was a huge highlight for me. It was, I was in Japan at the time after I left Tuggeranong, and Jake White resigned, and Laurie gave me a call to come back. And so that was a personal highlight. Winning a competition in 2020. Look, the disappointing thing was it wasn't the Super Rugby comp as a whole, but it was the competition that we were in, and you can only control what you're in. Because when COVID hit, we were playing really good footy. We were on top of the table, equal with the Crusaders, and we were in a really good place in that season. Away wins are really special, especially when it's backs to the wall. No one gives you a chance. You face adversity. You work incredibly hard over the course of that week and that 80 minutes and achieve something special. I remember playing the Stormers at Newlands, in 2019. I think we made 240 tackles or something, and had 2 yellow cards, and the crowds against you. It was a really hard slog, and that was a special win, and that probably turned our group around, and got us on course to achieve something as a group together that year. And then winning in New Zealand is always really, really cool. Again, because it's been rare for a lot of teams over the years. A little bit more common for us at the Brumbies. We've had some success there, but yeah, they're the highlights. Just sitting in the sheds, putting your arm around Quinzo after a game, singing the team song, having a beer. That's, as I said at the start, mate. That's why I started coaching, and I still love that side of it. You got to park the protein shakes every now and then, which the S&C blokes might not like so much, and pull out a beer. But yeah, they're the special memories at the end of the day, memories of what you'll only ever take to your grave.
Yeah, it's awesome. So, what makes a really good, changing room after a game for a win and then for a loss as well? Because a loss, we're all heads down. But how do you bring the group up, after a loss, and how do you make the most of it when you have gotten a win?
I think when you win, it's just living in that moment. You know what I mean? Don't worry about getting on your phone and have a look at what's on your phone, because that's the first place where most players and staff will go to these days. But just connecting and living in that moment and enjoying it, and don't be in a rush to leave the shed, because once you leave, it's done. We're pretty much, then we're on to the next one. After a loss, I don't like to say too much. Now, I think if you're emotional and you just blow up, I'm not sure what you get out of that. I certainly have been guilty of that in the early stages of my coaching career. But now it's righto, take a deep breath. Understand that we've lost a game of footy, but the sun will come up tomorrow, and we just got to learn from this experience and understand why we came second, and look to alter that and change things for the next week. I look back now, and coaches that do blow up after a loss, I think that's probably just to let some steam off for them individually. I don't think the team gets a whole lot out of it. So that's the main thing, is just making sure that we've got the process of getting them back up and making them feel like we'll get through it. It starts immediately.
100%. And I think all coaches, no matter if you're a strength and conditioning coach, rugby coach, netball, doesn't matter. You all, like in the early days, have blown up at the playing squad, and you look back on it now, like you said, yeah, it's like, oh, that's probably not the best way to do it, but you just got caught up in the moment, and it's always good to show emotion and passion, because you lost as well, and you want your team to know that you really cared about that and care about them, because you could have won that game. So I think in the correct sense, it's always good to show emotion and passion and all that, but if your team's already down and they got smashed or something, it's probably best not to blow up and save that, and allow them to think about their performance, and then come back on Monday or Tuesday, depending when your next training is, and quickly talk about it, but change your focus towards getting better and learning from that game as well.
Yeah, 100%. No, that's spot on.
Hi, everyone. We just want to take a quick break from this episode. We hope you're enjoying this episode so far and all the content we have produced. We appreciate all the support from our listeners and followers so far. If you haven't already, sign up to Elite Rugby S&C blog today. We provide free exclusive content every single week to our subscribers. You'll find our website link in our bio below. Remember to like, subscribe, and share Elite Rugby S&C on all social media platforms to all your family and friends. Thanks again for all your support, and now back to the episode. So, touching upon the 2020 Super Rugby season, which was incredibly challenging and rewarding at the same time, because the Brumbies were really successful. What did you and the team learn during that season, and how did you make the most of that season to win the championship?
I think we learnt that adaptability is key, and communication is key. Like you go back to 2020. I remember sitting in our house in Chapman on New Year's Eve, and the smoke blew in, and like we had to deal with the bushfires. at the beginning of that year, and that was just a tragedy for the country and the nation, and it got pretty close to a number of our players. Will Miller at the time, the Lonigans. So it was a pretty scary time. Once we got through the bushfires, well, firstly we had to relocate to Newcastle to get out of Canberra to train and train there for 10 days, and that was probably a positive, really. Whilst we had a sense of guilt leaving behind our families and our loved ones, and they got to sit in Canberra and breathe in the smoke. Where in Newcastle, it allowed us to come together and connect post the World Cup in 2019. So that was pretty cool. Again, we had to adapt there. Then we got the mumps. So before the pandemic, the Brumbies actually had to deal with the mumps virus, just something that we'd never seen, and our doctor had never seen, or certainly not within our environment. So I remember playing the Highlanders, and it was the only game we lost before Super Rugby was suspended. I remember getting phone calls that day. Someone each week would walk in to HQ with the glands just swollen. I got it myself. I was cleared to go to the game. Assistant coaches weren't able to go to the game. Players pulling out on game day. It was really difficult. And we got beaten on the bell, so that was tough. We got through that, and then I remember being in Phil Thompson's office, and he said to me, COVID will be next. And I laughed. I laughed, and I said, oh, no, I won't. And then sure enough, we meant to go to Tokyo and play the Sunwolves. That got relocated to Wollongong, and then we played the Tars on a Sunday, beat them well, performed really well, and then the comp gets suspended, and all of a sudden we can't go anywhere. You're only allowed to train in groups of 4. We had to split the gym up, get pretty creative with how we train to keep them fit and maintain some sort of skill and fitness level. So we just had to adapt, and we had to be prepared to adapt and buy in, and communication was really key. Locking young men up in their house where they can't move, can't go out, can't do anything. The partners can't go to the gym, whatever it might be. That's pretty tough. It's inhumane to a certain extent, and communicating and checking in on them was really important.
It was very challenging, but the team got through it and had some really good performances, and then were able to beat the Reds at home for a really famous victory. So it was just really cool to see, all those setbacks, and then, being locked up, bushfires, all that, the mumps. It just seemed all bad things seemed to happen, but the team got through it, and then were able to get a really good season and a really good famous victory as well, which was awesome.
Yeah, and I think that's what was great. Australia craves sport, and we managed to get sport back on the TV screens for people to enjoy and watch. And whilst it was different playing in front of restricted crowds or sometimes no crowd at all, we could play footy, and we could train and coach, and it was just the difficult part was it'd been 2 or 3 months off in between. As I said, we had great momentum leading into that Super Rugby season, and to try and regain that and win a trophy, which was a tough one to win, was really special.
And it seems like that season and then the next season after really sparked that rivalry between the Reds as well. Like there was a really good rivalry, and it still sort of feels like that nowadays. So we got one with the Waratahs, and now we got one with the Reds as well.
Yeah, no, I think so. It was off the back of that. And then I think in 2021, the games that we played against each other were phenomenal. You know what I mean? Like real high quality games. I remember, I think they beat us 41-39 or something in Canberra. They broke their drought down in Canberra, and that was a cracking game. Whilst we were shattered, we lost. I just remember thinking at the time, this is really good for Australian rugby. The rivalry, the quality of the game, the skill level, and that continued on. And obviously, we were shattered to lose in 21 up there at Suncorp Stadium in front of 40-odd thousand people on the bell. I don't think I'll ever get over that one.
Yeah, me neither. That was really hard, and there was a few questionable decisions, I would say, towards the back end, and yeah, that was pretty hard. That one, and also for me being a Seattle Seahawks fan, I'll never get over Russell Wilson throwing the ball when we should have handed it off and ran. Those two will just haunt me for a while, I would say.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's tough. It's tough. It's tough being a fan, mate. And yeah, I feel your pain.
Mm. So, outside of rugby, do you look toward to any other sports with coaches in those sports to try and learn some different ways to be a better coach as well?
Yeah, certainly. I love professional development, PD, and again, COVID sort of put a halt to that to a certain extent. You could do it over Zoom, and there was a lot of things done over Zoom, but experiencing how a team operates, how they do meetings, what's on the walls of the building, what do they live and breathe and stand for as an organisation. So I've spent a lot of time with the Australian Diamonds, the netball team, when Lisa Alexander was the coach there, certainly back in 17, 18 and 19. Mate, they were an outstanding team. Friends with the captain at the time, Laura Geitz, and just to see how they went about their work. And, they had incredible success, sustainable success over a long period of time. And when you get into that environment, you can understand why. The level that they trained at, the accountability of one another, staff to players, players to staff, staff to staff. It was, really impressive. Lisa Alexander's an outstanding coach and tough, but very fair. And then I've been to the Melbourne Storm a number of times. I've got a high respect for Craig Bellamy and Frank Panisi, who's the general manager down there, and Craig's right-hand man. And again, sustainable success. They've just, defied many people's opinions. They lose this player, that player over the course of the last 10 years, but they just continue to be up around the top and challenge. And I've been fortunate enough to go overseas, spent a week at Saracens, spent a week at Leinster, 1 week at Saracens, the next week at Leinster. They both played in the European Cup final that year. So that was really cool to watch and experience because they were so different. One was very coach-driven at Leinster, and the players absorbed the information. Saracens was all about humour, fun, having a laugh and taking the piss out of each other to a certain extent and player-driven, you know what I mean? So, yeah, PD's critical. No matter what age you are or where you're at in your career, look at someone like Eddie Jones and he's just constantly looking for ways to get better and improve himself. And if you think you know everything, then you're kidding yourself.
100%. And do you think your time down in the Melbourne Storm has helped you at the Brumbies? Because it seems like the Brumbies will sign a young talent that's been overlooked by another rugby team, and then they come down here and get really good, successful, outcome. Like, and we can name, Noah, Darcy Swain, Len Nikotau. There's a whole bunch of young boys who have probably got overlooked, but were
Yeah.
given a chance and given some really good coaching, and are now reaping the rewards.
Yeah, that's it. No, I think, like I love a story like Andy Muirhead, because I was a club rugby player, had a few seasons in a professional program. So I've got enormous respect for players that have to work, do an apprenticeship, have a job, experience what normal life's all about, play club rugby, go and train at Good Life or wherever it might be, or at your club gym on your own, and then really earn an opportunity in a professional environment. Those players then never take it for granted. If you gifted it straight out of school, it's come really easy to you, then do you genuinely appreciate it? And I always question that. And, that's something that, we've had some pretty cool stories at the Brumbies. And obviously the Melbourne Storm have done things very similar, guys that are on the scrap heap. And I think when I first started coaching, it was all about talent. Now for me, talent's obviously important. You've got to have it. But what is equally, if not more important, is you've got to have incredible work ethic and you've got to be a good person. Your character's got to fit what you stand for as a club. And that doesn't mean we need a squad full of, choir boys or guys that have never done anything wrong. People make mistakes. You know what I mean? We all make mistakes. But just making sure that when they come through your doors that they buy into what you guys are trying to achieve.
No, it's awesome. Yeah, like you said, there's many great success stories down at the Brumbies, and it just shows that it doesn't matter really who the coach is down there. They're going to help build that Brumbies environment and culture, and they're going to get the best out of you. And if you do a good job, good things are going to happen.
Yeah, I think so. And I think Canberra is well suited to professional sport. And it's probably why the AIS has been so successful back in the heyday, when we produced so many gold medalists and great Olympians and everything's within 10 or 15 minutes in Canberra, isn't it? You all live nearby. There's a good spread of local talent there now that are in the squad, but there's a lot of guys that are outside of Canberra. So you're a family. The girls hang out together, the kids hang out together, the players, everyone hangs out together, and you create a pretty special bond.
Mm, no, that's awesome. So, when you're not being a professional rugby coach, what do you like to get up to in your spare time? A lot of athletes like to go out and play golf. Are you on the same boat, or is there something else you like to do?
Look, I actually really enjoy golf. I never played. I used to play a lot as a kid. As a coach, um, the hours that you do are long. You know what I mean? Like you're often reviewing on a Sunday after a Saturday night game. You're in the office at 6. You leave at 6 or sometimes later. So they're big days. So for me, on a day off, to go and say to the wife and my 2 daughters that I'm going to go and play 18 holes of golf probably wouldn't be fair and wouldn't go down too well. So I think as a coach, it's really important to stay healthy and fit. So I enjoy exercise. I find that as an outlet for me, sort of clears my head. It creates the positive endorphins, creative thinking, all those sorts of things, and just hanging out with my family. My girls and my wife. I just love doing that. Like having a meal together, cooking a barbecue, and then just hanging out with my mates. I'm probably your typical Australian male that loves sitting around a barbecue with a 4X gold in his hand and just talking about life and making sure that you stay in touch with the people that you've developed really special friendships with. That's really important to me, and you've got to invest in that. And I try to. It's tough for everyone in the world we live in now, but that's what I love doing away from sitting in front of a laptop or blowing a whistle, mate.
No, that's awesome. I'm glad that you said you like to go to the gym, and that background behind you wasn't a green screen; it's an actual gym. So I think that's good.
I feel like a bit of a muppet, mate. Sorry, I've just set up this little office. I've never worked from home, and this is the only space that I've got here. So, yeah, don't people please don't judge me on what's set up in the background there.
No, that's good. Do you ever when you're not coaching or you got some time in between, you just jump in with the boys in the gym session and show them up, showing that you can lift a bit more and all that?
No, they'd always try and egg me on. Especially we used to do a Friday afternoon session out at the AOS where we'd work with Steve Babbage on our on combat, and it was a real physical session. It'd be, it was all about contact conditioning, mental resilience, and then some technical aspects. And whilst the forwards would be doing the combat, the backs would be doing a little circuit with Johnny Mitchell and Benny around the outside. So everyone was working incredibly hard. And they'd always try and get me to jump in and do that. But no, I'd prefer just to observe and watch the players, and then I'd jump in afterwards. Look, I like to train away from work. Again, it gets me out the door and into a different environment. So, yeah, I don't think I'd be showing anyone up now, mate. The body's slowly falling apart. The shoulders, the back, the knees. I'm feeling every scrum and every breakdown that I hit as a player.
Yeah, you sort of, you're just standing on the sideline watching the hits, and you're like, yeah, I'm glad I'm not having to tackle Alan Alatoa or, Will Skelton or someone like that. I'm just glad I'm not the one having to do it. I'll happily watch it on the sideline or on TV.
The size, the power, the fitness, the speed of these guys these days. It's yeah, the amount of respect I have for the boys that play Super Rugby all year, play Test match rugby all year. They get 6 weeks off at the end of the year. People talk about the money they get paid. It's a brief career. They deserve every dollar, honestly. You guys like your slippers, your Alatoas, your hoopers. These guys, Yeah, I couldn't have a higher amount of respect for them, because of what they put their bodies through, both playing and training these days. Training is tough. Yeah, it's incredible. Their resilience is at another level.
Mm. So speaking of training, how important is strength and conditioning training for rugby athletes?
Oh, it's critical. Yeah, it's so important these days, and you see at an early stage of someone's career the players that have had the physical development coaching and the players that haven't. And not everyone loves the gym, but that's life is. If you want to have success in anything, you've got to be prepared to sacrifice. And you might not love the gym, but you've got to park that and understand that the transfer from what you do in the gym transfers to on the field. It's incredibly important, to be as powerful, as strong, as flexible, as mobile, as fast as you possibly can be, because it's the difference. There's fine margins in rugby, and making sure that you squeeze in professional rugby, squeeze everything out of yourself from that side of things. And then as a program and as a coaching group, making sure that there's real alignment and transfer. The gym's not just being done separately. It's right. This is our game model. This is how we want to play as a team. This is, as S&C coaches, this is what I need from you guys to drive and make sure that they're across the game model, make sure they're across the language that I'll be using, and that's being said and repeated in a gym scenario. If power is on your game model, then obviously we need to train that power and really invest in that from a gym perspective. Repeat efforts, all that sort of thing. It's critical that there's alignment between S&C staff and rugby staff. And now we'd use 10-minute windows within a gym session, in between sets, or at the end of a gym session, just on micro skill. Might be an opportunity to get some tackle technique work in with Laurie Fisher, or some hand-eye work, or some catch pass within, having touching a football as often as possible, and not just parking S&C over here and rugby over here. That the alignment's so important these days.
I think that's probably been the game changer for me, is as a S&C coach, is understanding that I need to invest time into what the head coach is doing and really understand what is your game model and what's the language that you're trying to use to deliver that game model as well. And once I got my head around that, I was like, okay, that makes sense. And now I can really understand what the head coach wants and how am I going to transfer that into the gym and then communicate to the players. This is what we're trying to do to help you with the game plan as well. And if you can get your head around that, it's going to make a massive difference to your program. Players are going to buy into it. The head coach is going to buy into it, and you'll see the benefit out there on the field and out there when they're playing their games as well.
Yeah. And the players see straight through it. The players know when the program's completely linked and aligned, and they know when one's operating separately to the other.
And I love how you mentioned also doing some micro skills in there as well. If you got a couple of footies in there, the boys can take their rest while passing the footy, doing a couple of flick passes, just chatting and just doing it second nature. But all those little skills add up as well. And then if Laurie comes in or Dan Palmer comes in to do some extra scrum or tackle tech, again, it's just all those little one percenters, and they definitely add up throughout the day and the week. And when
Yeah.
you go into the in season and the game, when we start playing games, it's going to pay off.
Yeah, that's it, mate. And I think the other big thing is, individualization, like making sure that so many programs will just have generic programs. What's important for one player, might be hip mobility or flexibility, and how that's related to him from a scrummaging perspective. Neck strength, obviously, neck strength is incredibly important these days with concussion, and just making sure that you're individualizing each program. Nick White's program as a 31, 32-year-old who's worked incredibly hard, pushed himself incredibly hard over a long period of time, is going to look different now to what it would have looked 5 years ago or 2 years ago, and it'll look different to what Ryan Lonergan's looks like. So, individualizing each program and that takes a lot of time and a lot of work in the background for the coaches to put that together. But that's where you get real benefit for the player.
In Nick's program, is there, moustache curls as well? Is that part of the program?
Yeah, he does them when he's resting, mate. He does them when he's resting. that's certainly within his program. He's added that in without a doubt.
Surprised he hasn't started his own, line of male products for moustaches yet.
Yeah.
Could be a decent side hustle.
Yeah, no, that's it. You should suggest that to him. He's always looking for new ideas and thinking outside the square.
So, how have you enjoyed the experience working with S&C coaches in your career so far? Has it always been something that you've had throughout your career, or is it something that you've slowly learned over time in the professional world?
No, I've always had an S&C coach, and always like I go back to Souths 2008, 9 and 10. I had a guy named Lee Habner. He was only part time, but he was really good in terms of getting the boys fit, because that's so important at club level. If you've got a group that are committed to training Tuesday, Thursday night, and really want to work hard and get fit, then you win games, especially at the start of the year, off the back of that. I remember bringing in Brinley Abad, who was a professional S&C coach at the time, into Souths at the beginning of 2009, and just to consult and provide programs for our boys that were at a professional level. And we went from being 6th or 7th to beating grand finalists that year, and I know that certainly played a huge role. And then obviously at the professional level, I've been really fortunate to work with some outstanding S&C coaches, some of the best in the world we produce in Australia. Just hearing a different perspective on things, on how they do things, and making sure that your own mindset is about growing and not being closed off to different ideas. Because whilst it might sound really weird or strange at the time, give it time to give it a crack, see if it works. You got a long pre-season where it's 10, 12 weeks, and if something doesn't work in a day, I don't think it's going to do an enormous amount of harm over the course of what is a long period of time. So no, I really enjoy it. Challenging each other, me challenging them challenging me around what we're doing. It's all about accountability and getting the best out of each other to provide, at the end of the day, what we want is to be a world-class program for the players, where they feel like they're getting everything they need to be the best player they can be.
I think if you can remember that, it's about the player and the team, then those arguments you may have can be solved pretty quickly as well.
Yeah, it's not about necessarily improving a testing result here or there. It's the best S&C coaches understand that it's all about what's best for the player and what's going to help us win on Friday night or Saturday night or Sunday afternoon.
100%. So each week you're given the challenge of selecting, your first 15 plus the finishers as well. What considerations do you think about when making selections as a head coach?
The big thing to start off with is what's your plan? What's your tactical plan? What's your strategy for that week in particular? Who are the best 23 that as coaches or as selectors we feel will execute that plan? But there's a lot of different things you've got to consider. There's obviously cohesion and combination is key, and I'm really big on that. I don't like chopping and changing from one week to the next. But as we spoke about before, they're big, strong, fast, powerful athletes these days. Playing 15 games in a row one week after the next just isn't sustainable for players, especially your older player getting towards the back end of his career, or a younger player who's just starting out. It's hard work. So, and then other things to consider are, what's our bench look like? Do we need experience to come off the bench? I look at the Brumbies team that's playing tonight. It's a pretty experienced bench that'll finish that game. So obviously there's a strategy in and around that, in and around selection, combined with the fact that some players haven't played a whole lot of trial time. So that will alter who starts and who finishes your game, and who ultimately gets selected.
No, it's definitely a fascinating area to understand who's going to be in the team, because you just never know. Like, if you look at other sports, they're pretty consistent. And I always refer back to the NFL. Like, it's always pretty consistent who they're going to pick unless they're injured. But for rugby, you got to take in consideration all these little things and come back to the game plan and the strategy that's in place, and picking the best team there. But also, do I want my a different combination to develop, and how long am I going to allow that combination to be developed, or I'm going to change it next week, and yeah, it's just very a fascinating area, I think.
Yeah, and that's the other side of it is development. Like you can train as much as you like. Um, there's a couple of things with Super Rugby in particular. The travel schedule's enormous. Not as difficult now with South Africa out, but going to Perth, going to regional New Zealand is tough. Going from Canberra to say Invercargill, it's easy to get to Johannesburg, in my opinion. Honestly, the connecting flights, time sitting around in airports, delayed flights. So the travel component, and then how are you going to develop your players? How am I going to provide an example like a Bill Pollard opportunity to play and progress and know that he's show that he's good enough? That's important. I know last year against the Force over in Perth, I didn't take James Slipper, I didn't take Alan Alatoa, a number of senior players. We took over what was a pretty young group, but they were hungry. They knew their role, and we played some of our best rugby over there. It was a tough win in the end when Banksy got red carded and broke his cheekbone, unfortunately. But the performance of some of our younger players that night was outstanding. And then you're increasing your squad depth and developing players along the way.
Yeah, no, I love that. And in order for a player to get back in the matchday squad when they didn't get selected, what do you tell this player, and what do you want to see changed and improved so they can get back into the matchday 23 instead of going off and playing club rugby or potentially just having the week off?
Yeah, it's a good question, and really important. There's nothing worse as a coach than having to give disappointment to a player, whether it be around selection that week, whether it be around contract, whatever it might be. As I said at the start, you care for these boys, and they're human beings, and giving them bad news is tough. So, but it's part of the job. As a player and as a coach, you got to deal with it. And I watch players really closely after they've received news that they probably don't like. And a lot of the time that is around selection. Most Monday mornings you have to deal with that as a coach, and there's always going to be disappointment. That's human nature, and you've got to allow them to have that disappointment. But they've also got to understand that they've got to park it, and that's what I'm looking at. How quickly does he park the disappointment? How's his body language? How does he carry himself? How does he train? Has he been the best team man that particular week and help the team prepare for the opposition that week? And if you stick to all of those boxes, then there's a fair chance he'll come back into the team sooner rather than later. If he does the opposite, if he sulks, mopes around, he's an energy sapper, he brings others down, and I've experienced both. Then you won't last long, or you won't be, you'll be pretty much zero chance of getting selected the following week. You know what I mean? So that's where attitude and being the best team man you possibly can be is so important. And I remember reading a book, and there's a chapter. It was a netball book, and Catherine Cox, the former Australian netball captain, she went from being captain. There was a new generation of players come through, and all of a sudden she's still in the Australian squad, but she's gone from being captain, first pick, to being a fringe player. And her goal every day was just to be the best team woman she possibly could be to help the team prepare that week. And if she was lucky enough to play another Test match for Australia, then that would be as great an honour as it was when she played her first Test match. So, yeah, really important that as a coach you understand they're going to be disappointed, but as a player you got to park it and move on and be a good team person.
Yeah, that really resonates with me with the energy sapper, or another term I've heard is energy vampire. You're sucking all the energy out. From a book I read, which was the energy bus or something. So it was something along those lines, and it was a really good book. And it's saying you don't want to be the person sucking all the energy out. It's really good to acknowledge, like, this sucks. I don't want to not be in the team. So why don't I do the best I can be to help prepare the team for that week and give myself a good challenge of getting back into the team, and then also asking the question, okay, Dan, why didn't I get picked this week? Okay, these are some areas I need to work on. I got a week to work on it, and then give you a headache selection next week when I'm actually worked on these things. And
Yeah.
are you going to pick me, or am I going to continue to work on this area as well? So it's good to acknowledge that it sucks, but like you said, you got to park it and move on.
Yeah. And feedback is critical, and that's where you've got to provide that as a coach. But the reality is, though, so many times around selection, there's players always think, "Oh, what have I got to be better at?" And look, they'll always have their individual plans, IDPs that they'll work off. But sometimes, as a coach or as a selector, it's a feel thing. I just feel this is right for this week, and that's really hard for a player. They want something that they can write down and write. Oh, these two things I've got to be better at this week, or but it might be as simple as you just got to help us prepare. You got to lead the number two team around the non-23 to ensure that we're ready to go on Saturday or Friday, and that's important. But when if it is performance based, then as a coach, you've got to be honest and you've got to provide that feedback. And sometimes they don't want to hear it. And then I'll always give them, right, I come back and see me tomorrow, or I'll call them back up. If sometimes there's tears, and I'll say, you come back up tomorrow, mate, and we'll have a chat once you've slept on it, and we can talk in more detail, because a lot of the time they'll hear you're not in the team, and then I'm talking and it's just like white noise.
Mm.
You know what I mean? All they can hear is, I'm not in the team, I'm not in the team. Mum and dad are meant to be traveling down this week, or, my girlfriend was coming down to watch, or, yeah. So there's a whole lot that goes into it.
No, it's really interesting. It's probably some stuff we, as fans of the game, probably don't realize. And yeah, that's a really good insight. So thanks for that.
Pleasure.
So, who have been some of your favorite athletes to coach over the years, and why have they been some of your favorite players?
Um, I think maybe not favourite athletes, but I think it's the character of the person, isn't it? Like that's what you love about any friend or any person that you're connected with, and we've had some pretty special ones at the Brumbies. The great Bongo, Josh Man Ray, who I played with Josh at Souths in Brisbane, played with and against him, and to continue to coach him. And he was just old school. He was cut from the same cloth as myself. He'd come in, he'd drive 2 hours to get to training from Harden, drive home 2 hours, just work incredibly hard. Great man. Mac Hansen, funny bugger, always looking for an opportunity to have a crack at me or someone else, and you love that about them. You know what I mean? Because then you see the human side of the coach and of the player. Lockie McCaffrey, great man. Like, you never mention the word athlete and Lockie in the same sentence, but incredibly smart footballer, great team man, but just a really good person. Tavita Kurandrani, funny bloke. Wouldn't say a whole lot, but incredibly funny with some of the things he'd come up with and talk about. So, but there's, mate, I could list a lot. They're all, as I said, I go back to talent, work ethic, and character. There hasn't been too many blokes at the Brumbies. In fact, I probably could mention one who you'd hesitate to go and have a beer with on a Friday afternoon or a Saturday afternoon. They're all good men, good buggers. Laurie Fisher, great character. I reckon the lessons that Lord gives to so many people is just be yourself. Don't give a shit what someone else thinks or says about you. You just be you. And I reckon Lord lives and breathes that every day of his life.
No, he's a smart man, and had him on the podcast as well. And it was just fascinating to understand how he thinks of the game and
Yeah.
how he's been in the game for so long. And he's just another example of he continually improves and to develop his coaching style to deliver the best service that he can for his players.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. Great man.
So the next question was, oh, who's the biggest pests, over years at coaching? And I was surprised you mentioned Mac Hansen as being one of the favorite players, because I could also see him getting on your nerves a little bit as well.
Yeah, but that's why he was. I wouldn't say he's one of my daughters always used to ask me, Dad, who's your favorite player? Who's your favorite player? I'm like, that's like telling you girls that I love one of you more than the other. It just doesn't happen. So but you know, Mac's a pest. There's no doubt, and he'd be right up there. Matt Tamul was a pest. I used to set this catch and pass game up every captain's run that we do backs versus forwards, and I'd have the cones measured out specifically 3 meters and the poles measured out, and it was quite competitive and a bit of fun with the boys, and Pup would get great enjoyment in coming over when I had my back turned and throwing the poles and moving the cones. Mac was always trying to stitch me up or stitch others up. Yeah, but you love that because it's the human side of things, and that's why that's why you enjoy them as people.
You got to have that banter and that
Yeah.
just funny moments in a rugby team and just in any environment. Because if you're too serious all the time, you can't you take yourself too seriously. And you're like,
Yeah,
don't take yourself too seriously all the time. Have some fun, have some enjoyment, and create an environment when you can muck up a little bit, but also you're doing the work as well. So
and that's exactly it. And I think we got the balance right there at the Brums over the last few years, and that's yeah, it's critical. And they got to see that, you know, the staff, the coaching staff, they got to see them vulnerable and see the human side of you as well.
100%. So moving on to the Triple H, coming into the last few questions. Hardship. Can you think of a hardship in your rugby career or even coaching career? That's what I mean. But if there was a time as a player or as a coach that sort of stands out, and how did you get through this hardship, and what did you learn through the hardship as well?
Yeah, no, I've got a couple. I think when I first went to Tuggeranong, the Vikings, and Benny'd be able to talk about this as well. Like I wanted to, and I was given a little bit of direction on where the club was at, and a little bit lazy, a little bit sloppy at that particular time. So I came in there with an iron fist, mate. To, you know, we're going to be disciplined, we're going to be professional, we're going to train at a high intensity, and I was probably too intense to start with, and I probably got a number of people offside. You know what I mean? I forgot that some of these boys have been on the tools all day, or been at uni all day, or at work, whatever it might be, and they weren't necessarily playing rugby to be a pro. You know what I mean? They were coming to see their mates and connect, and so that was something that I look back on and think, yeah, I went too hard. I mean, look, we ultimately worked through it and won that competition pretty easily in the end. But there were challenging times early on, and then the 2014 NRC was probably a little bit similar. It was the first ever NRC, so you had a group of players who were professionals who all of a sudden weren't going on holidays. They were playing more games of rugby, weren't getting paid a cent extra, and they're like, "What's this competition all about?" And then you had a group of semi-professionals or club players who were thriving for the chance to play in a professional team or environment. And I tried to create this professional environment. It was all about the protein shakes and probably not having a beer and relaxing and enjoying at the right moment and right time. So you know, that season didn't go well for us. We had a squad that many thought should have won it, and we performed really poorly. So I learned a lot out of that.
Mm.
That'd certainly be the hardship.
No, it's awesome. Not awesome that it was a hardship, but awesome that you were able to learn from it and understand that was a hardship and you got the things out of it and reminded yourself that, you know, these are the things I do value. I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen again, that we go away from those values.
Yeah, and I think I look back, like I remember the club grand final would be on the Saturday, the program would start on the Monday. So of course the club players want to have Mad Monday,
Mm.
and I'm
Silly,
sitting
silly Sunday as well.
silly some weighing up whether should we still train? Should, you know, that's a no brainer. Like, let them celebrate their season. You know
Mm.
what I mean? So just things like that. You know, I want to give myself an uppercut for even thinking like that back in those times.
Mm. That's all right. You learn from it and you grow from it.
Yeah, 100%, mate.
So, hero, who is your hero and why is this person your hero?
My mum and dad, like just the work ethic that they had. They were publicans, worked incredibly hard to send 4 kids to boarding school, you know, just regional pubs. But their work ethic and their values and how they instilled them in myself and my brother and my 2 sisters. I'm just so grateful. And same with my wife, Carla. Like moved to Canberra. We left our comfort zone in Brisbane back in 2010. Yeah, at that point in time, it was like, what are we doing? We had a house in Brisbane, both had good jobs. It was sort of like a halfway house. You'd have family and friends just dropping in all the time. Then you move to Canberra, you live out near Viking Park, and all of a sudden it's just you and two little girls, who are, I think, 18 months and 3 at the time, or 4. So Carla's support, and my daughter's support over every move throughout my career, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you if it wasn't for them, and it continues to happen as we've seen this week. With my next move, and yeah, just very grateful.
Shout out to mum and dad, and shout out to Carla as well. It's awesome.
Carla and my girls, Amelia and Maya, love them to bits.
That's good. So, highlight. What is the main highlight that sort of stands out in your coaching career so far?
I probably touched on this earlier, but it's the winning dressing shed. There's not, after 2020 was brilliant, and I've got photos of those memories, and but yeah, any sort of winning dressing shed. The funny moments as well. You spoke before about the characters, the pests, and those sorts of guys. Like, there's not one particular highlight for me, I don't think. I think it's just all of those special memories. And over the 9 seasons that I had at the Brumbies, the 5 as head coach, there's just so many. And then, working with the Wallabies and playing France in Paris in front of 85,000 people, Cardiff at the Millennium Stadium, like they're just unbelievable highlights and experience. And you just sit there and pinch yourself. I remember in Paris, we couldn't hear it ourselves, but Laurie saying to me, "This is why we do it, mate." And it's just so special. But sitting in the sheds having a beer after a win, nothing beats that either.
That's awesome. So, if you could only give 1 or 2 points of advice for rugby athletes out there, what would you say?
For rugby athletes, I'd say be prepared to work hard, mate, and be prepared to make sacrifice. If you're not, then pro rugby is probably not for you, and it's not for everyone. But I firmly believe, in general, in life, if you're not prepared to work hard, if you're not prepared to sacrifice, or make sacrifices, then it's going to be hard to be successful in any field. We'll always have it. I see young players who, a lot of their mates will just want to play Colts or want to play thirds at club rugby, and the weekend, the weekend for them is about going out. It might be back-to-back nights out, that sort of thing, and then they use the week to recover, and then get ready for the weekend again. Whereas as players, you've got to use the weekend to recover and sacrifice. Well, I can't be going out until all hours every weekend. The young men, there's times and a place, do it every now and then, 100%, and we'll plan and organise that for them within the program anyway. But you've got to be prepared to say, sorry, boys, I can't be there tonight. I've got to get myself ready for Monday.
100%. I think that's great advice, and something you might have to learn as a younger rugby athlete in your time, especially in Colts. It's quite exciting times when you go to your first senior club. So you just got to learn that, okay, if I do get play up on the Saturday, that means Sunday's gone. When I come around to Monday, probably still a bit dusty. I probably haven't slept that well, and I got to go to the gym. Oh, I might skip the gym, and then it all adds up, and you start to say, oh yeah, I might have let my strength go. I might have popped on a couple of kegs that I probably didn't want. If
Yeah.
I do want to make the most of my time here in Colts and then potentially play first grade and see what happens, I need to make that sacrifice, as you said, but also pick your times where you do want to have some fun and celebrate as well. And most clubs will have those social events planned out throughout the year, so use them as your times of having some fun and letting some steam off, but just don't do it all the time.
No, 100%. No, that's right.
Mm.
Balance, mate. That's probably the big thing.
100%. So, who should be my next guest on the podcast? Is there any old teammates, athletes you coach, or other coaches that you sort of come to mind that should jump on for a chat?
Have you had McCaffrey on?
I haven't had McCaffrey yet.
He's the current head coach of the Gungahlin Eagles, mate. So a good connection there to club rugby down there, and he's a smart player, smart rugby brain. He has a different perspective on things. He'd be good to chat to. He's just at the beginning of his coaching career now, and he's always got plenty to say. Just don't talk to him about strength and conditioning, mate, because he doesn't know what it's about.
That's all good. All right, I'll definitely reach out and see if he wants to come on. So where can listeners find you on social media if they do want to reach out and ask you a question or two?
That's hilarious. I don't tweet. I just think you open yourself up there to all sorts of criticism. We cop enough of it as it is. I use Facebook and Instagram to stay in contact with friends and to read the news. Really, that's the big thing. But there's so many bloody ads on both of them now. It drives you nuts. But I'm no influencer, mate. But I don't use social media to promote or anything like that. I just generally use it to keep an eye on what my mates and what my family are up to. So, but jump on there if you want to see what I'm up to. But I think on Instagram I've probably got about 2 or 3 posts, and I think one would have been after that Stormers win. That was my first ever. The boys had a laugh at that, going, "Oh, he's just posted his first ever Instagram." Birthdays for my kids, that sort of thing.
That's awesome. It's never too late to start, being more social on social media and being an influencer, mate. You could always have a side hustle going on. Who knows?
No, that's it. No, you're 100% right. I probably need to get with the times there and be a little bit more active. But
easy done. So that's all the questions I got for today, Dan. It's been awesome to really get to know you better as a coach and as a person, and I just want to say thanks. It's been awesome, and thanks for everything you've done for the Brumbies and Australian rugby as well. All the best for your next adventure. I'm really excited to see how successful that goes, and I really hope we do get you back here in Australia very, very soon, and maybe one day coaching the Wallabies in the head job as well. That would be awesome to see.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, Kieran. I love, I've spoken to Duncan Chubb and a couple of other guys. I love these little podcasts. They're you guys are doing a great job with just getting people's story out there, and connecting with the game, or might not necessarily be rugby. So thanks for having me on, mate. And there's no doubt I'll be back in Australian rugby at some point in time. I look forward to the next adventure with Carla and my girls over in Leicester, and no doubt we'll cross paths again soon, mate.
Thanks for tuning into another episode of Elite Rugby S&C podcast. Remember to like, subscribe, and rate Elite Rugby S&C on Spotify and YouTube, and make sure you follow us on Instagram. Sign up to become a beast via the link in the description or via Instagram page. Also, don't wait, make that good decision and join Elite Rugby S&C today and take your game to the next level.